Hello there guys and welcome to another video. Today's topic are gonna be the Iowa sisters, and we're gonna have a little talk about how to play, what is, and how to build every single one of them. And no, Illinois doesn't count because it's technically not in Iowa. We're gonna be talking about Iowa, Wisconsin, and Missouri. New Jersey is coming our way, but until we actually receive her in 4 months, we cannot really know. Okay, so what do we exactly have here? Iowa class is generally considered one of the most middle-of-the-road battleships that can exist in this game. So without having a lot of special features and things that you need to constantly think about, it makes it so that this ship is actually very beginner-friendly. And that shows in numbers, being the second most played tier 9 battleship in the game. So what are the characteristics of Iowa hull in general? Well, first of all, we need to look at the armor, which is pretty okay. 32mm on the nose and the aft make it so that you only are scared of things like Yamato class to actually overmatch you, but they, incomparable also exist. 38mm on the middle makes it so that you cannot really be overmatched with any AP, meaning that tanking AP damage is generally pretty okay. However, very big superstructure on the Iowa makes so that very easy for like lower caliber AP to full pen you through there, so you're gonna eat a lot of damage. Also, all the AG spammers just love farming this, so you need to be careful about those. In terms of your maneuverability, well, Iowa was technically built as one of the fast battleships, but currently with all the battle cruisers being released as battleships in the game with capacity to outspeed the DD, the speed of Iowa is not really the greatest anymore. However, don't be too much alarmed about this, because it's still very comfortable to play ship. In terms of AA, well, you don't really have AA, but it's not like you have just captain with a handgun like the IGN ships. Let's just say after AA rework, it's hard to tell what ship exactly has AA, and I'm gonna make a totally separate episode about the AA rework. However, a very good thing comes with the guns of the Iowans. The 406s on Iowa class are very effective, even though the lower caliber makes so that you don't really have a lot of overmatch. It's just enough so you can overmatch stuff like Des Moines without a problem. However, only on the tip of the nose, like it's gonna be a little bit more problematic for you, because you cannot just shoot anywhere, you need to actually aim. With aiming, however, comes something that is gonna make it much easier for you, which is the Sigma. Meaning that the likelihood of your shells falling where you want them to is much higher. So the only thing that is stopping you is the dispersion, which is normal for a battleship. American battleships in general also get a couple extra things. First of all, your shells are incredibly floaty, meaning that it's gonna be really hard for you to aim at longer distances. However, it comes with one advantage. Your shells are gonna be hitting from on top of the enemy, meaning that the likelihood of actually overpenning is much less, and combine that with a lot of extra AP damage from upgraded AP Alpha, you can actually deal a lot of damage with just full pens. American battleships also have slightly upgraded heal consumable. It's not a super heal, however it can generally just heal more than a regular one. Now let's quickly go over the build for our 3 ships. It's gonna be almost identical on every single one of them. For captain, we go for a standard tank build with gun feeder, as changing to HE is sometimes relevant on those guns, for example when you're being rushed by a destroyer or there's a Kremlin in the way. Otherwise, standard tank build is gonna work just fine. In terms of upgrades, we have a little bit different way than standard battleships, as American battleship get 2 extra upgrades in those slots. First gives us a little bit more range on main battery and secondaries, which is something that I really like. And on the 6th slot, you've got a special upgrade that decreases the dispersion even further. And some people would say that it's better to run a reload mode on this slot. However, I'm just a sucker for dispersion, okay? I like my guns to be very accurate, ergo I run the dispersion mode. It's nothing bad to run the reload if you prefer it that way, based on your preference. Of course, we need to run the acceleration mode, because these days without acceleration mode you're just gonna die. And what is different is that on Misery, since Misery has a radar, as probably everyone you should already know, you can think about running the call upgrade for radar, however it's not necessary. Okay, now let's go over how we should actually play the Iowa class. First of all, you're not a brawler. Forget about pushing, especially in early game, as your ship doesn't really have enough durability or HP to withstand it. What you need to do is position yourself at least 13 kilometers away from enemy, so you can use your concealment to go dark at any time and reverse or even kite. But don't position yourself too far. You don't want to shoot at enemies further than 18 kilometers, as the floatiness of your shells will make it really difficult for you to hit anything but a stationary aircraft carrier. You need to find this room between 13 and 18 kilometers to keep all the enemies at bay. In terms of angling, you want to angle your ship slightly so that you can swing your back gun and shoot it from time to time, but don't focus around shooting the back gun too much. You just find shooting only the two front ones and keeping a better angle. AP shells should be your main bread and butter against majority of the ships, as if you cannot really overmatch it, you can definitely full pen it for the superstructure dealing massive damage. But make sure that you also punish broadsides. Your ship is really accurate, so you can easily get rid of cruisers or certain aircraft carriers sometimes. When it comes to a little bit later in the game, you can think about making a slow push and cutting the distance to around 10 kilometers. You don't want to go point blank, because your citadel is still pretty vulnerable. You're not playing a German battleship. You can still be citadel. And keep that distance until you reach the end game, which you can cut it a little bit more if needed, but generally do not try to brawl in those battleships. And it's a general basic strategy for Iowa, and generally Iowa Hall. You can play Winsconsin and Missouri the same way. However, to make the best usage of their different consumables, as Missouri gets a radar instead of spotter plane, and Winsconsin gets completely different set, as she gets a funny button and this new replacement of the FAA. Okay, so how to play Misery? Remember when in the early game I told you not to brawl? Don't do it. You don't want to push in and try to force usage of your radar in early game. Unless you're playing some weird division that can make sure that you can live after that, well, don't try it. Your ship is still pretty vulnerable on point blank, so you're gonna be completely done for if you try that. What I want you to do is instead play it like a regular Iowa in the early game and use your radar as a peer pressure in mid to late game. You know, when most of the dangerous targets are already running away and you kinda need to start working around the caps, this is a good way to pressure enemy destroyers into leaving it, even if you don't actually use the radar. Also, if something pushes you with a smoke screen, like a Napoli, for example, it's a very good tool to make sure that this push is gonna be negated. So make sure to use your radar in very specific situations that you are certain is gonna give the most pressure on the map for your team. You need to also remember that you only have 3 usages of those, so don't spam it. You're not a radar cruiser. Your job is not to hunt DDs, but you can make sure that no DD is gonna go close enough to torp you with this. Winsconsin is totally different kind of case. Even though it's an Iowa hull on tier 10, it still gets ridiculously good, especially considering that it is super buffed. First of all, Winsconsin gets Vermont pen almost, and this makes it so that you can be a little bit more aggressive. Pair it up with a funny button that reloads your consumables and DCP rapidly while also cutting your main battery reload in half. Well, this is a very dangerous cookie. However, you still need to remember that you are not a German battleship and you shouldn't be the one pushing. What I want you to do with your Winsconsin is still play pretty safe in the early game. You need to know where enemy DDs are, you want to know where enemy hard secondary battleships are, so you can avoid their death zones. After which, you can think of making a controlled push. And what I mean by controlled push, you need to make sure that at no time during your push, enemies are gonna be on your broadside or from multiple directions. You also want to have as much of enemy broadside as possible, which you can really abuse with your funny button. And before you even start pushing, you want funny button to be ready up. Why so? Because during this push, you're totally gonna lose a lot of HP. Your Iowa class, you're gonna eat damage. You can heal it back up, but after one heal goes off, you're probably gonna die before you live to the second one, unless you have the funny button and you can chain them up and use the DCP of cooldown basically, so that you can make sure that you're not gonna be burning yourself to death. I'm not even talking about flooding, because you shouldn't really eat torpedoes in the first place. In terms of the new AA thing and how you should use it, I feel like I should make a totally separate video about it, as this consumable is not really the greatest. And yeah, you will see what I'm gonna tell you in that video. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope we'll see each other in another video. It's been Sent by Silent. See you next time.